Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today, Mitch Light of The Athletic. We thank our presenting sponsor, WellSpire, Nashville's Learning and Development Center. WellSpire offers personal and professional development opportunities in a beautiful facility in the Gulch neighborhood. Stop by for an event with world-renowned speakers or host an off-site event that will wow your team or your clients. We also thank our co-presenting sponsor, the Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water and has a mission to bring clean water to the world. The news is presented by Sutherland & Belk, a Nashville-based injury law firm. Sutherland & Belk is committed to fighting for those who've been injured in car, motorcycle, and truck accidents. Check them out at sbinjurylaw.com. Vanderbilt hosts Evansville in baseball on Tuesday. That game 4:30 at Hawkins Field. Jack Leiter, the likely starter in that one. Our guest line presented to you by Boll & Branch, which was started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. Had no clue how comfortable Boll & Branch sheets were until I got them. They are fair trade certified, meaning they are made under safe conditions by men and women treated and paid fairly. Try them free for a month. You can return them, but you won't want to. Once you get the sheets, try the mattress. That was voted the best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com. That is spelled B-O-L-L. Enter the promo code Vandy and get $50 off your first set of sheets. Mitch Light joins me. He is the what are we calling you these days at The Athletic?
Same title when you asked me last time I was on here, Chris.
I know.
Managing editor of The Athletic Nashville and The Athletic Memphis. So maybe jot down a little sticky note, put it on your desk.
This feels like talking to my wife.
Well, maybe you make the same mistakes over and over with your wife too.
I think you're onto something there. But
I've spoken to her about this, or I've never spoken to her. I think I've met her, so just wanted. I'm not conspiring.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as far as she knows, we never had this conversation. Yep. So let's have a conversation about sports. I guess we could start with basketball. Man, that was one heck of a basketball game we saw. Didn't turn out Vanderbilt's way, but that was one crazily entertaining game. And frankly, I did not suspect I'd see a game that was as intriguing as that one was when I walked in the gym. What was it, Saturday night? Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to steal an old Kevin Stallings phrase, and he would only say this after a win, but he said, that was a really good college basketball game, and he'd always say, I'd like to think I'd say the same thing if we lost, but he never seemed to say that. But, it was very entertaining. And we can talk about the ending, obviously devastating. So many things had to go wrong for Vanderbilt, but I was so impressed by the way Vanderbilt played. Like the LSU game, I thought, see if you agree, that was Vanderbilt's best game of the year, the LSU game. But to me, you watched a Vanderbilt team that day that you got an unbelievable performance from Max Evans. It looked like a team that played way over its head. I thought on Saturday, Vanderbilt just played a really good basketball game. And you weren't looking like, wow, this is just a mirage. They're just because they didn't, they shot three for a nice percentage, 7 for 15, but it wasn't just like they were bombing threes like against LSU. And I thought Saben Lee had one of the best performances in a long time for a Vanderbilt player. I'm sure Aaron Nesmith had great shooting games this year, but to score 34 points on 17 field goal attempts with no threes is very, very difficult. And I thought Vanderbilt had a great game plan defensively. I loved what they did. Anthony Edwards got his, but I thought they did a good job denying him opportunities. I thought Vanderbilt, late in the game up until the 20-second mark, I thought their offensive possessions were great. So many times you see teams just dribble out wait for the shot clock to go down, and Vanderbilt did that, but they had nice plays drawn up. The alley-oop dunk to Saben Lee. Then I think on the previous possession, or maybe a few more, they just Stack called a late. I don't know if it's if it was a late call or it was the play all along where I'd have to go over it again. But I think, Scottie Pippen just drove down and got a layup. So I thought Vanderbilt just played really, really well. And I don't think it was Tom Crean. And Jerry Meyer pointed this out on Twitter. And I thought the same thing watching the game. Tom Crean's defensive inability to switch up their defenses then in the first half when Vanderbilt had Saben Lee on the court and 3 of the 4 walk-ons who aren't threats offensively. Like Brayley Albert, as we've seen, can score. I mean, he can hit an open 3. The other 3 walk-ons, including Drew Weichert, who had played 1 minute, are no threats at all. And he guarded Saben Lee man-to-man. Like, I don't know how and the other player in that on the floor was Ejike Obena. You had literally one offensive threat on the floor, and Saben Lee probably scored 6 points during that stretch. So if I'm a Georgia fan, I thought that was criminal that Tom Crean didn't adjust defensively to what Vanderbilt had on the court there. So that's kind of my long, winded take of the first 39 minutes and 40 seconds, I guess.
Yeah, that was just a bizarre world. Second half of the first half. When you look
Yeah.
up and it's just Saben Lee and like Drew Weichert comes in. I'm like, I don't even know who that is. Like I knew I'd forgotten he was on the roster. I mean, I
Yeah,
wrote, they
it
had,
was the worst, and I don't mean this in a bad way, just a fact. It was like the worst offensive lineup that you could possibly field at Vanderbilt in the time that I've watched them play. I mean, you had 3 walk-ons who are just literally not threats, and then you have the one scholarship player on the team who's probably the least offensive threat in Ejike Obena. It was wild. And I think Vanderbilt probably extended the lead.
yeah, I mean, Drew Weichert gets a steal to end the first half and lays it in. And I mean, I'd written the same thing after, like, he was probably at one point surrounded by the worst surrounding cast that's ever taken the floor in a Southeastern Conference game.
Could be. I mean, there was one year where Vanderbilt lost early in the Kevin Stallings era to a Georgia team that had like 2 or 3 walk-ons starting one game. But yeah, no, I think that's. I mean, obviously you can't prove anything like that, but yeah, and again, I point to how does Georgia let that happen? How does Georgia let them score? Saben Lee penetrate there. You double, triple team Lee. There's so many ways you can do it. They see. I'd have to go back and watch, but they seemingly just played it straight up.
I think I remember the game you're talking about for Georgia because I think I actually went to Stegeman to cover that game.
Yeah,
Was
I
it
just remember.
like maybe 04, 05, somewhere in there? I think maybe a
Yeah, it
Dennis Felton
wasn't '04
team.
because it wasn't '04 because that's when they made the tournament. It might have been '04, '05 because I remember trading texts with Brad Frederick after the game, and he was just flabbergasted how poorly they played. It was one of those where they just kind of were struggling on the road, probably showed up, figured they had it locked up because Georgia was just really bad that year, and I think some walk on hit a bunch of threes for Georgia, but you know, I'd have to go back and look it up.
Yeah, and I think was it the guy's name like Kevin Brophy? He scored like 17 points. I think he died several years ago in like
I
an
think you're
accident or
right on
something.
both counts.
Yeah, I mean, I would not remember that unless I'd gone to Stegman, which was a very depressing atmosphere at the time. It was just
I've been
gray and
been to
drab.
Stegman many times.
Yeah. Um, I thought Scottie Pippen was really good in that game too. I mean, I thought Scottie Pippen, a lot of his second half, he was right there with Saben Lee in terms of how well he was playing.
Yeah, hit some big shots, and that's why it's a shame that he had missed those free throws. And this is going to sound like I'm from black and gold sunglasses or glasses, and that's obviously the perspective I watch the game from. But you can see a lot of close games where you know Team A or Team B deserves to win. I can honestly say Vanderbilt deserved to win that game. It's not like and this is something else that Jerry Meyer pointed out, and I went back and watched. Go back and watch Georgia's lack of effort rebounding Vanderbilt's missed free throws. The last one of the game, the dudes just stood there on the Brayley Albert bad call out of bounds play, which we haven't talked about yet. The Georgia dude just stood there, didn't box anyone out. On the game winning play, Vanderbilt got in there and could have had a good chance for an offensive rebound due to lack of hustle for Georgia, and the ball just went to the Georgia guy, and he weaved in and out and hit a running 35-footer. So I know there's luck involved in sports, and Georgia was very lucky to win that game, obviously for a lot of reasons. With got fortunate with the call there, but yeah, it was just I felt bad for Scottie Pippen, obviously. And Saben Lee goes 10 of 11 from the line and misses that one. Scottie Pippen had been he was 3 for 6, so had been 3 for 4 at that point. So just crushing loss, obviously the way it ended. I just felt bad for the players. Guy like Saben Lee's just been busting it all year and had a great season, and Scottie and those guys, they played really well.
Well, I'm looking at the box score they give us. They've given us an expanded one this year, and there's some stuff in there that didn't used to be in there in years past. Saben Lee drew 11 fouls in that game. I think he's had a game with maybe more than that, but it just goes to show you what an incredible offensive force he is. By contrast, Anthony Edwards, who's Georgia's best player, drew 4, and he's
I thought Edwards, you commend him for this, but I think he's almost a little too passive offensively. I thought, Vanderbilt put Max Evans on him again. I think they had a good game plan for him. And he took one bad shot, in my opinion, and he hit it. It was the 3 coming on the first half on the out of bounds play on the side of the student section, right in front of like where Joe Fisher sits, and he caught it and just jumped up and nailed it. When you're that good on a team like that, I think you can live with some more bad shots from your best player.
That dunk he threw down in the first half over Brayley Albert, that was on the end of the floor where I was. That was just unbelievable.
You can see why he's an NBA athlete. He's an NBA prospect. In fact, he is physically. I think him and Aaron Nesmith look similar. Nesmith is a better shooter. Edwards is a more explosive athlete, although Aaron's a good athlete too. But that you can just tell he looks like an NBA body, has an NBA body, NBA player. He played 39 minutes and 10 seconds, and he took 16 shots, which was the most on their team. But I partially credit him and then partially fault him for not being a little more aggressive.
Speaking of dunks, that one that Saben Lee threw down with about 4.5 minutes left, that was also on my end off the feed from Pippen. Oh, that was a pretty special play too.
I saw, I don't know, I've told you, we sit up in 3A, row 1, and we had a perfect angle, and I was sitting next to my son, and I saw the whole play develop. I was like, watch this. And then, sometimes you can't tell from that high up how good the pass is, but good delivery and a good dunk. And that's kind of one of those plays I mentioned earlier where I thought Stackhouse did a great job where they worked time off the shot clock, yet still got a good shot. So, and I think that's why you saw Stackhouse, how devastated everyone was. You're obviously devastated in a loss like that. I just think it was so frustrating from a Vanderbilt standpoint because they played so well. They did everything the preparation was great, everything about it. Now you could fault some of the very late game stuff, letting Wheeler go coast to coast. I think I've not rewatched that, but a lot of people kind of say Dessou might have been worried because he had 4 fouls and wasn't aggressive enough. But I mean, at that point of the game, you're 4 fouls. I don't care who you are. Getting a stop is more important than preserving, a foul with 15 seconds to go and fouling out of the game. That was really the only strategical thing I can find fault with. Sure, they could have used a foul to give at times too, that exact possession, but that's not as, you just can't let someone go coast to coast and only take 4 or 5 seconds. That's really the only thing I can find fault with.
I watched the replay. He almost lost the ball on that too. I did not realize
he's
that
kind of
live.
a wild dribbler. He's kind of all over the place. And so, it's just, again, so many things had to go wrong for Vanderbilt. And, another product of where we sit is we're right on the baseline there above it. And I could see live that there was no way that Brayley Albert went out of bounds. And, just what's his face? I'm drawing a blank on the referees.
Was it Anthony Jordan?
No.
Pat Adams.
Pat Adams just thought he saw something through his peripheral vision, and you can't think you see something at that stage of the game. So, just obviously an unfortunate break that did not go Vanderbilt's way.
I don't think it was peripheral vision. I mean, from what I saw, it looked like he was looking right at it. On the pictures I saw later.
Maybe I'm trying to the benefit of the doubt thing, because if he's looking right at it, in basketball terms, he was not close to stepping out of bounds. I mean, you can say, yeah, it was 2 or 3 inches. That's close. But as far as in sports being on the line or not on the line, that really wasn't close.
Yeah, you don't call, I think, in that spot.
Exactly.
You don't really call it in any spot. But anyway.
And I'm not sure this is the case there, but and I keep quoting Kevin Stallings. And Kevin Stallings used to have a funny phrase, and it made sense. He said the problem with officials is, and I've said this on the podcast before, is that they're human. And his point was, like, in the back of their mind, and I'm not saying this necessarily applied to that, but when a Kentucky guy and a Eastern Kentucky guy, or a Vanderbilt guy for that matter, are going for a rebound, in the back of their mind, it's like the Kentucky guy's bigger, stronger, faster. He should be getting that rebound, or he should be blocking that shot. And that was kind of his point there. Sometimes referees, maybe it happens in college football too, make assumptions, not overtly, but they just think they see something. And I would love to hear what he thought about that, and give him some truth serum and say, how could you make that call there? So, but it happened.
Speaking of Kevin Stallings, let's talk about that name in a minute for reasons I'm sure you can anticipate. But one thing that jumped off the box score, Vanderbilt only had 20 rebounds. It is not often you see a team with that few rebounds in a game.
Yeah, that was another. They got Stack mentioned this post game too, or in the radio interview. Vanderbilt's first shot defense was really good. Georgia stayed in the game for a stretch there in the first half. I believe it's the first half. No, I think it was the second half. Just getting follows, and some of that was. And again, I'm not trying to just overly praise Vanderbilt. Their first shot was defense was good, forcing bad shots, and there were some weird rebounds on missed threes there, and some of it was just Georgia. I'm looking at Hammond's. Rashawn Hammond's only had 4 rebounds. It was sort of by committee. There weren't a lot. You know what? When both teams shoot over 50%, there's not a ton of rebounds to be had. I mean, Vanderbilt was 24 of 47, which is phenomenal shooting, and Georgia was 30 for 56. I can't remember an SEC game. I mean, I'm sure I don't look at every SEC box score. It's not too often when you find a conference game this late in the season where both teams shoot over 50% from the field.
Yeah, and actually Vanderbilt was at 27 to 47, which is probably what you meant to say.
But I'm not sure what I said.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I looked down at one point with about 4 minutes left, and Vanderbilt has 13 rebounds. I was like, what?
Yeah, that's because Georgia did Georgia only had 20 defensive rebounds. They had 10 offensive rebounds. So, they missed 26 shots and they got rebounds on 10 of their 26 misses. That's pretty good. And it just it's a product of some bad misses and the product of just being, more athletic, obviously, on the front line.
Yeah, Vanderbilt had 4 offensive rebounds, and one of them was by Brayley Albert.
Yeah, well, that was
which went for naught. So
that one shouldn't count there. So,
Kevin Stallings.
Yeah, that was a shocker.
Now on one hand, I think if you wanted to find a violation in any coach's program anywhere, you could find it. Agreed?
Yes, and I'll just jump on this. What he was, it's sort of like the Bruce Pearl situation. It's not necessarily the crime, although there's other things Bruce Pearl did at Tennessee. So people would say, oh, it was just on a picnic or a barbecue. There were other things. Trust me there. It wasn't necessarily the fact that they had, extra non-coaches coaching at practice, which probably every program does. It was the fact that they scrubbed the tape and didn't cooperate. And I guess Kevin Stallings is like, I'm not coaching anymore, so why should I even cooperate? But for a guy that liked to, play by the rules, and I believe he played by the rules at Vanderbilt for the most part. I believe, he's an honest coach and all that stuff. But for him to get slapped with this at the end of when his career's over is ironic, whatever word you want to use. But the crime doesn't sound that bad. It was just the cover up and the lack of cooperation, probably.
Well, the whole thing to me is just amusing, and I don't mean that towards anybody personally in the story, because it's like, really? This is where we are? We've got wiretaps of
Will Wade's coaching this
yes.
weekend. Kevin Stallings is a 3-year show cause.
Like somebody spent time and effort on giving Kevin Stallings a show cause, even though I don't think either of us believe Kevin Stallings will ever coach a game again unless it's his grandson's
right
6-year-old team one day.
Exactly.
It just is comical. But anything else with basketball before we hit baseball?
Not really. Not really. I mean, again, just said many times, I thought they, again, Vanderbilt played really well. It was an entertaining college basketball game, and just unfortunate ending. It was funny. I was doing something last night with my son, and I don't know how this came up, but because when I was in school was the Steve Grant 3 to beat Georgia at the buzzer. Oh, we were talking about Jim Valvano because there was a promo for Jim Valvano show, his 30 for 30 on ESPN or something like that. And he asked something about how long how long was it till after he retired? Did he die and all that stuff? And I was, I remember he broadcast the Vanderbilt Georgia game when Grant hit the 3 at the buzzer. So I was calling up the clip on YouTube and I showed it to him. He's like, another Vanderbilt Georgia buzzer beater. And there's also, I think there's been 4 since I've been watching Vanderbilt basketball. Two. Jody Patton, when I was in college, hit a three from the corner to beat Georgia down in Athens, I think my junior year, 91, 92. And then was it Kevin Bright in his only year at Vanderbilt, about, on the tail end of the Kevin Stallings era, I think hit a like a baseline jumper to beat Vanderbilt. So there's been four that I can remember in this series.
I remember the Kevin Bright game. I'd forgotten that was Georgia. He hit one from the baseline with his back towards where Joe Fisher and Tim Thompson sit on the floor down there.
Got a very friendly roll, I believe.
Yeah, Kevin Bright, that's one that really I would have loved to have seen how that played out, because he was a really good player. And I think from what I was told at the time, his mom was just like really missed him. She lived in Germany. It was like,
I think she was sick too.
Yeah, and it was like every day, Kevin, come home, Kevin, come home. And I mean, who can resist that, I guess? So that was one of those that you're like, man, if circumstances in life are a little different, then I wonder how that would have played out at Vandy, because he was a really good player as a freshman.
Yeah, he was. He was all, kind of one of those stat stuffers. Guy who could do a little bit of everything. So then, I'm Googling Jody Patton buzzer beater. I doubt that. I don't even think the game was on TV. I was listening on the radio in my dorm, I think. But hit a baseline jumper over Bruce Elder. I remember talking to Bruce Elder about it this afterwards, and he said, "Yep, had a hand in his face." So, so it goes.
I neither remember that game nor do I remember Jody Patton.
Don't remember Jody Patton. Wow, lack of respect. Do you remember Reggie Tinch by chance?
Oh yeah, I remember Reggie Tinch.
Okay, I remember he had one of the most vicious dunks ever on John Amici. I think it was John Amici's last moment as a Vanderbilt Commodore. I don't think he played the rest of the year.
Georgia had some athletes in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, serious athletes. Yeah,
serious
athletes. I remember yelling at Reggie Tench from the student section, and yeah, he was quite the ferocious dunker.
Do you remember, this would I think be before your time, Marshall Wilson was going to throw down a dunk that was going to beat Vandy. I think it was a breakaway, and it was free, and he clanked it off the back of the rim. And I think Barry Booker got the rebound and threw it to Goheen, and then he did the going for the layup, take the abrupt left turn to the corner, and hit the three at the buzzer. That was another crazy Vandy Georgia ending.
That must have been 88, 89. It was the year before my freshman year.
Yeah, I remember watching that one on TV live.
Yeah, I know the play, but so Georgia always had good players, didn't always have a great team. Although my freshman year they won the league because Kentucky was ineligible. Georgia was the 1 seed. Vanderbilt was the 8 or 9 seed, because again, there's 10 teams in the league and Kentucky was not eligible. Vanderbilt beats Florida in an 8-9 game in Orlando, then beats number 1 seed Georgia, and then maybe beat Ole Miss to get to the championship game, or lost to Ole Miss in the championship game. Might have gotten to either the semis or the championship game of the SEC tournament that year.
Yeah, boy, so much of this is starting to fade from memory. It's crazy.
You're getting old, Chris. I'm evidently not getting old.
No, you're not, even though we're like the same age. It's funny how that works. You must be in a black hole or something. But
I guess so.
Let's talk baseball.
Sure.
I'm thinking there's a lot more to be encouraged by than not at this point.
Sure. The pitching is probably better than we thought. Showing the potential to have more depth than we thought. And the hitting, I'm still, I think there's still a wait and see approach with the hitting against quality pitching. But, when you put Ty Duvall back in the lineup, and then if Dominic Keegan can provide the type of bat they think he will, that really bolsters what was looking like, potential after the weekend, potential trouble area is hitting. We'll go to the pitching real quick. Obviously, I was there Tuesday for Al Leiter, and he was, anyone who saw the score, obviously he was terrific. And South Alabama's supposed to be pretty good. I know they're off to a rough start, but I don't care who you're playing. He was really, really good there. It's looking at the stat lines here, and some of these right-handed pitching. Ethan Smith, Leboki, Thomas Schultz, Jack Leiter, obviously Hickman and Rocker. The batting averages against and the strikeout numbers have been incredible. Really, Tyler Brown, Bounced back yesterday for 2 innings, was pretty sharp, gave up a couple hard hit balls. I want to say Eater's, and I'm bouncing around here. I thought Eater was great yesterday, not just his numbers. I mean, you can have a good performance, give up 1 or 2 hits, but get a lot of hard hit balls or a few hard hit balls hit right at people. I was at the game. They had one hard hit ball under Eater against Eater, and it was the home run. I think he walked a guy, then gave up a 2-run homer. Literally, that was the only ball that was remotely hard hit. So I thought that was an encouraging progress because he threw strikes for the most part. So yeah, I mean the lineup is not going to be what it was last year. This team's going to have to win games, 5-2 and 4-3 and stuff like that. But I think with the pitching, they're definitely capable of doing so.
Yeah, they gave up. Well, he gave up the preceding the home run was an infield single, and I believe from memory he gave up 4 hits and 3 were infield singles, and then
Yes,
one was that bomb to left.
They weren't hard hit. Sometimes they could be hard hit. A guy knocks it down. They were just perfectly placed. So yeah, that's obviously there's a lot of ways to judge a pitcher, but with my inexact, I'm not an expert on pitches and location, all that stuff. I can watch, but just like, did someone hit the ball hard against you? Yes or no? And yesterday the case was definitely no against Jake Eater.
Yeah, I keep a scorecard. If I'm watching a game either there or able to watch most of it on TV, I will keep a scorecard. I keep it for that reason. I like to go back and look at ground ball outs and fly ball outs. And if there's a lot of L's on the scorecard, then that's when you start saying, well, maybe the performance wasn't quite what you thought it was based on the numbers. But I don't think there was an L on that scorecard anyway, L indicating line drive out.
Yeah, totally. And, Tyler Brown maybe gave up 2 hard hit balls. I believe maybe just one, the play that
he gave up 2. He gave up the one that was almost the home run, and he gave up one to center. And I think that kid will come around. But I think at this point, there's a fool me aspect with him that's missing a little bit. It's not alarming at all. I mean, the only thing that would concern me about Tyler Brown is if there's a lingering arm issue from last year, but I don't think we're seeing that in the velo, which I think is one place we'd see it if it was an issue. I think this is just a kid who, some kids, like you saw this with Rocker last year, some guys just take a little longer to round into form, and I bet that's the case with him.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope so for his sake and their sake, because and I'm not a pitching expert by any stretch, but the weird thing is that most of the hard hit balls against him have been on 2 strikes. So it's just he's looked good, but inability to finish guys off. And the ball to Thomas yesterday was on an 0-2 count. The home run against Michigan might have been on a 1-strike pitch, but for the most part, he's getting ahead in the counts and then getting hit hard, which is kind of the opposite of what you'd expect.
Staff numbers here. Not often you see this 8 games in 104 strikeouts and 25 walks.
Yes, and that's the encouraging thing for Vanderbilt staff that traditionally has great arms, but sometimes has guys who can't find the zone. And Luke Murphy, who I think at time will be a good pitcher coming off the Tommy John surgery, has 6 walks in 2/3 of an inning, and so he has almost 25% of the walks, and he hasn't even pitched a full inning. So, some of those freshman arms or some of those right-handed arms I mentioned earlier, Ethan Smith, no walks, 7 innings. Leboki, no walks, 5 2/3. Schultz, no walks, 5 1/3. 1 walk for Leiter in 5 innings. Doolin, 1 walk in 4 innings. That's impressive numbers right there.
Well, here's another one, or here's actually 2 or 3 more. They've only hit 2 batsmen so far this season. That's really hard to do.
I like that. Batsman. Sounds like an old-timey word.
I think it is. We're, one of us is aging, one of us is not.
Yeah,
but,
exactly. I call them bats. You call them batsmen.
Hit batsmen, whatever they are. Hit dudes that got hit by a pitch. How's that?
Yes, okay.
That's hard to abbreviate, but
yeah.
And they've given up 7 doubles, no triples, and 2 home runs.
Yep. Impressive. Yeah. Again, we thought the pitching would be good. Didn't know the depth, and right now, who we have not seen yet. And I mean, I don't know how big of a role they're going to have for him, but I thought Chance Huff would have gotten out there by now. I don't know if there's an injury issue. I think he's been warming up for a game. Was warming up at a time, but have not seen him yet.
No, I was thinking the same thing. I think he is the only guy. Well, no, he and who's the kid from Florida? Ryan Keenan has not pitched yet. I think Keenan is recovering from an injury. so that may have something to do with it. But one, and I didn't get to see him pitch, and man, I wish I did. Eric Kaiser has thrown a scoreless inning, struck out two, walked one. He's got a pitch that was described to me, I think, as a knuckle change. I don't remember what it was, but it was a hybrid pitch I'd never heard of. And I kind of want to just see that to see what in the world that looks like.
Yeah, I think I was listening when maybe it was on Friday night. Did he pitch? I think. So yeah, I mean, I think he went through one or two innings last year. So, wonder how big his role will be this year.
Well, and back to Eater, man, I mean, it's crazy the choices they have because I think they could easily start Ethan Smith. Obviously, they could easily start Jack Leiter on the weekend. Obviously, Schultz to me looks like he could probably handle. Leboki looks like he could handle it for sure. Michael Doolin was a guy they talked about as a starter. They mentioned Tyler Brown as a starter before the season, just in the
Right.
throw stuff out there and let's think about the options phase. I do wonder, even if Eater throws really well, the one hole on this pitching staff is a bullpen lefty.
Yes, and I'm just speculating here because we're just talking baseball. But like, if Tyler Brown struggles for another week or two, would they consider moving him to the rotation to see if it's if it's better there? I'm with you. Like that's why I thought Smith would be the Sunday starter to get that lefty out of the pen there. So that's an option with Brown. I doubt they would do that, but that might be a possibility. And one thing, I think you brought this up in a podcast you did with Aaron Fitt, especially later in the year when there's only one midweek game. I guess they try to schedule most of the two midweek games earlier in the year. But most, I think once they start SEC, there's usually only one. When you're getting good starting pitching, I mean, this is obvious just if you do the math, but when you're getting good starting pitching, you're going deeper into games. It's a lot easier to fill those innings with really quality arms, and those are the scenarios I'm seeing for this team in SEC play, where there's not many opportunities where there's not going to be many situations when you're really going to have to put guys in that you don't trust. There's not going to be, hopefully not too many starts where a guy goes 3 1/3 and then you got to get, 5+ out of your bullpen. I think they're going to be in situations where they're going to be, have a lot of really good arms in key situations.
Well, the other thing I like about that, and now part of this is because their hitting is not what it was, and it's not going to be. I mean, the lineup last year was historically great, and you can't hold that up as a bar to comparison, especially at this point with so many of these kids so young. But the games are fast, Mitch. I mean, what they played 2 or 3 last week in 2.5 hours, that's great.
Yeah, I was a little late to Saturday's game, but figuring we'd either have to leave the game early to go to the basketball game or, that wasn't the case. I had plenty of time in between games. And then yesterday, game started at 1. I was home by 4. It's I think all of us like baseball, but we'd rather watch 2 hours and 45 minutes of baseball than 4 hours of baseball.
Yeah, I mean, if it's the same quality in the same period of time, then absolutely we would. Let's talk offense a minute. One thing that's sticking out to me a little bit is the bunt game. I may write about this a little later in the week, but Carter Young and especially Cooper Davis, the turf plays differently. It's not as fast. Davis has particularly figured out how to drag a ball down first and get it just hard enough to go past the pitcher, but just slow enough to where the second baseman's got to charge and make a tough play, and he's getting on time and time and time again like that.
Yes, and he did it once against a lefty pitcher who obviously falls off the mound the opposite way. He's 11 for 32 this year. I would guess 6 of them are bunts. Would you guess that much?
I think that's probably fair.
Yeah. So, and Carter Young, the whole knock on him was, would he hit enough to stay in the lineup? And I realized, the pitching, they're not playing elite teams right now, especially this past 5 games. But he was fortunate, I think, on a scoring play where that triple they called a hit, which could have been an error, but he hit a line drive to the left field. So that's, it's a hard hit ball. And then he just missed a home run yesterday, but then followed that up with a hard single up the middle, and then he hit a line drive to right. So far, I mean, he's hitting 310. He's hitting the ball hard. So that's been a pleasant surprise right there.
Yeah, I was going to mention that next. I think the most encouraging thing was the ball that he hit for that would have been a home run was fouled by, I guess, a couple of feet. Wasn't fouled by a lot, but it shows the ability to get the bat around on the ball and hit it a long way. And that was one of those that, like, sometimes that left field wall is tricky. If you just hit a moonshot with a lot of arc on it, it can barely clear the wall. And it's, in a lot of other parks, it might be an out in front of the warning track. The one that Carter Young hit on Sunday, I think, would have been a home run anywhere if it's fair.
Yeah, he crushed it. And so, yeah, I mean, again, I don't know if that will hold up. And, I don't know what that was kind of the Connor Kaiser, not Kaiser Sose. I don't know. Kaiser Sose seems more like an outfielder to me than a middle infielder.
Yeah, it seems like a utility infielder.
Yeah, he can do a little bit of everything. Connor Kaiser, that was the knock. Could they, afford to keep his bat in the line? Now, I think Kaiser's a better defensive player, just was one of the best they've had at that position. And he eventually hit as a junior. So, I don't know what the barometer or what the level for Carter Young is on a lineup that isn't going to be as good as those lineups that Connor Kaiser was in. But obviously, so far, so good. He is passing the test.
Yeah, well, the thing that's got to change, he's got 9 strikeouts and no walks, and that's one thing I want to see where he develops as a hitter.
Yes.
But I'll tell you who's the opposite of that is Justin Henry Malloy. And that kid, I just had questions like, would he take the leap? And look, he's hitting 231, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. But the kid's got a 545 on base percentage in 6 games, and he's patient. He's not pressing. He's not taking bad hacks. He's hit the ball hard a little bit here and there. He's got a double. That's one that I'm really watching because he's playing errorless ball at first. I don't know if anything's been spectacular, but defense at first was a huge concern coming out of the weekend, and his bat was kind of a concern, but at least he is finding value in getting on base, and if he continues to do that, he'll keep that role.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens when Dominic Keegan comes back, I know they want to get his bat in the lineup. Malloy, I guess, can play some third. I didn't see it. I think I was listening to the game the other day when I was picking up my son from baseball. Max was on the call, I think in the first inning, so it was still, a big play. Vanderbilt obviously won the game handily, but I think he had a big scoop on a Carter Young throw that with 2 outs and runners on second and third, where if he doesn't make the scoop, 2 runs score. So I was listening. I don't know how difficult it was, but I'm with you too. I've not seen him personally have to make a difficult play at first, but that'll be something to see what happens there with, they put Will Duff in the lineup yesterday. I'm sure they just wanted to get him some at bats. He hit the ball hard, got a nice sort of a bloop single, but then a hard hit ball. And, you had to sit CJ Rodriguez to get him in the lineup. He's the guy they want in the game there. So there are some options on offense.
I think with Keegan, it might have sort of the Steven Scott effect, and this is what I mean by this, okay? Because you saw Scott play catcher some. You saw him play a lot in left. I think he might have even gotten a few starts at first. Keegan was the guy they wanted at first. And, of course, he wasn't able to start the season there, hasn't played yet, as you said, maybe coming back this coming week. But he also, from my understanding, was maybe their number 3 catcher, and you don't want C.J. Rodriguez back there every game. Duvall, I think, is still got a lingering hamstring injury, which I would think that catching, I don't know if that's the best or worst thing for it. You're not having quick twitch sprints, but you might also be putting some strain on that through the crouching. I don't know how that goes, but point is, I think you might want to get Duvall some rest in terms of moving around to let that thing heal. And with Malloy playing well at first, I wonder if there's going to be a domino effect where you could see Keegan at different spots, or you could see some pieces moved around in different places depending on the lineup on a particular day, just because he does have the ability to play multiple spots. And I do wonder, I'm trying to remember, did he play in the outfield last year?
Keegan?
Yeah, I don't think he did.
I don't think so.
I don't know if they've worked him out there. Point is, I think that there might be some options beyond just plugging him in at first because of the dynamics here.
Yeah, I mean, Parker Nolan's looked fine. He's in 292. You could put him. It could go down to Malloy versus Nolan if you want to put Keegan at first, and then Spencer Jones started the first 6 games. You're not going to forget about him. So it's just as we thought. It's going to take some it's going to take some time to sort this thing out and they might not get an everyday lineup. Last year was kind of a luxury but there's a lot of times when, from game to game, based on righty or lefty, or things would switch up. They'd switch things up. And Matt Hogan's a guy we haven't seen. He's played pinch hit, I think, but he's played 4 games, and I thought he supposedly had a good fall. So there's another guy who might get an opportunity at some point.
Let's go to the mailbag, which is sponsored by Mark Gent of Simply a Fan. Mark organizes road trips to sporting events across the country and is doing so for Vanderbilt Baseball Road Series this year. Go to simplyafan.com to get more information. Tell him you heard about it on the podcast. Okay, Dan B. Nash wants to know biggest surprises on the pitching staff so far, positive and negative.
Good question. We touched a lot about the pitching. Positive, Jack Leiter, maybe. We've seen a lot of, including Kumar Rocker, we've seen a lot of really talented guys take a while to find their footing, to be so effective so early, I guess is very positive. Leboki, has been almost unhittable with 5 innings, two appearances, 5 2/3, 1 hit. We heard good things about him, so I guess those two. I guess the Tyler Brown has to be the answer for on the other side. We talked earlier, Chris. We think he'll be fine. We're not overly concerned, but when you've lost 2 games with your All-American closer with a 1-run lead in the 9th, it's hard not to single him out as the one disappointment so far.
Yeah, Brown unquestionably the unpleasant surprise. I think for me it's Thomas Schultz, because I knew that Doolin and Leboki could be factors, and of course we knew that Leiter could be too. Now, nobody expected those guys to be that great, but Schultz was a guy that I think came on late in the spring and was kind of further down the list of relievers after those guys. So to see him pitch as well as he has, I think was not something I expected.
Cool.
Oh, let's see. This from Ann Arbor Dory. Any plans for the Athletic to cover the Vanderbilt Athletic Strategic Vision? Says, if yes, I'll subscribe on the spot.
Well, I don't want to overpromise, but Joe Rexroad, he's monitoring that. He's actually earlier today met with Candace Lee Story for a story. I wouldn't say we're on the beat, but we are monitoring it, no doubt. And Joe will be Joe will be writing about it.
Mr. Vandy says, with all the pitching Vandy seems to have, you think it can make another run to the College World Series?
Sure. This team is very talented, even though that we've talked about the hitting, not being as good as last year, which is obviously going to be the case, and maybe not as good as some other really good Vanderbilt teams of this decade. When you have pitching like this team does, you can, there's really, would I predict them to make the College World Series? I don't know. I haven't seen enough yet, but it's hard not to put them in the mix when they can pitch as well as they're going to pitch this year.
Yeah, they've scored 47 runs and given up 19, and that says a lot about the kind of team they have.
Yep. You know a lot more about baseball than me, Chris, but when you score 47 runs and the other team scores 19, you're going to win a lot of games.
That's usually the way it
goes. Unless you give up 2 runs in the 9th when you got a 1-run lead.
Right, and that's happened twice.
Yes.
But anyway. Mitch, any other questions or things to discuss before we end the podcast today?
No, if you let me promote something I'm going to be doing next week, and I think I might have mentioned this, and I mentioned it to you. If you, I think it's going to be next Tuesday, so if we do this again next Monday, I'll talk about it. It might be Monday. I've written an oral history of Shane Foster's senior night game that's going to be up on The Athletic early next week, and it was a lot of fun to do. I'm pretty proud of it. I think I did a pretty good job. I've gotten some feedback from a lot of people. I've shared it with a lot of people. I talked to Kevin Stallings, Brad Frederick, Tom Richardson, Shane Foster, Alex Gordon, Ross Neltner, Rick Stansberry, Ben Hansborough, who's on Mississippi State, Joe Fisher, Andy Boggs, Vanderbilt Media Relations, Brandon Barca, who used to work at Vanderbilt, who was involved with the video team. I'm trying to think who else I talked to. That might be it. So it's long, but it was fun to do, and like I said, it'll be out next Monday or Tuesday on The Athletic, and I think Vanderbilt fans will really enjoy it.
Oh, those kind of pieces are always fun to read, and I know with the research you've done, it'll be a terrific read.
Thank you. So yeah, thanks for having me on, and look for that next week. And Always good to talk to you.
Yeah, give your Twitter handle before you leave.
Okay, it's at Mitch Light.
He's Mitch Light. I'm Chris Lee. Thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast. We've got more of these coming later this week.